Hey, Buddy Manning here. Welcome to a post-game Garden Report. Summer League Game 4 in the books. The Celtics going to wrap their Summer League slate tomorrow against the Magic. The NBA announced today, and not a pretty one. 3 out of 4 games now sloppy for the Celtics. This one, I think, more indicative than any of what this team's been out in Vegas. At times disconnected, early and often turning the ball over in this game. 10 in the first half, put them behind double digits against the Knicks, and kept them chasing throughout this game. Defense didn't help them for much of this one. When you give the ball away, that's always going to put pressure on your defense. Celtics end this game with 19 turnovers, 4 from Dalano Banton, 4 from J.D. Davison, who now has 30 assists, 20 turnovers in Vegas. Not the ball handling poise you're looking for from him at this point. And I think so far through the slate, he's been the biggest disappointment on this team and needed him to set these other guys up, give that stability, give that organization to this team. And that's largely what they've lacked throughout this slate here. Jordan Walsh has had to do quite a bit of creation on his own. You love the aggressiveness, but he ends 3 for 11 in this one. Shoots well from 3 again, which you love. But you're looking for a little better than 1 for 6 inside the three-point arc, though. 5 free throw attempts, hitting all 5. Pretty solid. I liked Walsh again in this one. One of those turnovers, I believe in the second half, was a sloppy live ball throw away from him. And everyone up and down this roster gave the ball away in this one. Banton did shoot 7 for 12, which was nice to see. You see the rebounding upside at his size with 9 in this game. 2 assists, 4 turnovers. He's a secondary ball handler. And a lot of times for this team, since he entered the lineup in 2 games now, has been a primary ball handler, taking the ball up the floor here. Brad Stevens talked about that a little bit in his interview down there. Not great so far. And listen, the structure of this team, the talent up and down this roster, it's there. I thought Balcerowski was solid in this one, had that nice and one late. Doka Azubuike hasn't been great at all through the Summer League. 0 points today. Jay Scrubb, throw him the ball. He's going to get points. And at this juncture in Summer League, as I said last game, when he's shooting the ball and it's going up and in every time, at some point you do have to start to think about, should this guy get a two-way deal now? I think he left the Magic, the Clippers, with an intention to fight for a full-time roster spot. So you'd have to wonder what his stomach is to sign another two-way deal here. But it is his last chance to prove himself in that capacity. Do other teams have roster spots out there? Is there opportunity for him? Is there a market for that guy who, again, when we're talking about two-way deals, you want to start to see some guys that can play. I mean, Davis is back. I think that's a good decision. Yeah, you drafted him. You invested in him last year. See it through a little bit, despite some inconsistent returns so far. But he's not a guy who's going to impact the NBA team this year. And it's not easy, but you do want to start to bring in guys who not only project to grow and evolve and impact the team eventually, but maybe even some under-the-radar finds who can give you a few minutes during the regular season. The Heat have been great at that. There's been a couple teams across the league who have integrated those guys well. I thought the Clippers did at times last year. It's not easy, but that is what you want to start to do. Use those as some pseudo extra roster spots, not instead of guys who are going to play mostly in Maine next year. To that point, could Scrubb sneak in some minutes at that 2-guard spot next year? The shot maker, maybe. And that is the one redeeming quality of this Summer League roster, particularly for Walsh and Scrubb. Shot making's been there for them. Even Justin Champagnie, I think, has flashed some solid shot making at times, inside and out. 4 of 9 in this one from 3, 5 of 10 from the field. He has showed a little bit in the later portion of the Summer League for sure. But overall, a sloppy mess today, playing from behind. The zone, not great. That zone continues to be interesting experiment out there. Will that be something we see with the pro team here? Wish I asked Tony Dobbins or even Joe Mazzulla if he does end up talking out there in Summer League while I was out there. about that. Probably the question I left on the table out there because they've played quite a bit of it. They've leaned into it hard. Today, Cutters killed them. Charlie Brown, the big one for the Knicks, lit up the Celtics in this game. And want to see one more solid performance closer to that Lakers game than this for these guys, because what we saw today doesn't point toward much impact for these guys on the Celtics next year. But I think we knew that going into this summer with this roster in place here. And Jordan Walsh being that one guy who maybe could break through, continuing to play well, continuing to shoot well, at least in this one. This definitely wasn't a stronger performance, but 2 of 5 from 3, you'll take that. That's all you can really say about this game here. And much of the team's overall issues here are structural. They just don't have the overall roster that we've seen from this group in recent years. But one more piece of news today. We'll get to that right after this. All right, I want to take a moment to tell you about HelloFresh. What's HelloFresh? Well, you're going to get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. Love them. The convenience, especially going right to your door. Skip that trip to the grocery store. And those seasonal recipes, I mentioned them, backyard bratwurst bar right now, key lime pie, and you're going to get the best picks that go from the farm to your door in less than 7 days. More than just delicious dinners too. Snacks, sides, more. You can add over 100 items alongside your order. And there's calorie smart, protein smart options that help you feel satisfied. Well, the Jaylen Brown negotiations in Las Vegas did pause, is how it's being described in this Boston Globe report here. Brown, the Celtics will not talk contract while he goes to a union event. The NBA Players Association hosting an event overseas. Brown's attending. While he does that, he will not keep in touch with Boston about this extension, which did not come to fruition in Vegas as was originally reported and hoped for. When the Celtics personnel went out there and Brown spent time out there, did not attend any of these Summer League games, and mostly focused on his apparel brand out there. Not great. Still hearing optimism through these reports, and of course I heard it out there in Vegas and multiple places that this will get done, and more optimism in this story that they'll resume talks, that they'll get something done, that there's no rush on this deal. And yeah, I can understand that. But when, the reports originally pointed toward a deal in Vegas and that they'd figure this out and that there's just some fine details being sorted out here, the fact that this is halting and I guess we'll resume at some later date and there's no timetable on this deal, hard to feel great about it. Hard to think it's normal. Hard to think it's just not a priority right now or that there's other things going on in front of it. It's weird. Now, does that mean it's not going to get done? Not necessarily here. I still think there's a lot in both directions that would point toward them wanting to get this done. But does Brown want to make the Celtics sweat a little bit? Push this to free agency? Maybe use that as some leverage to get some more here? Do the Celtics have some pause about the full Supermax here? I don't think that's it. Something on that Brown end, because that's not what we're hearing right now. We're missing that angle. And he's usually quiet on his moves like this. Elusive, I think you could almost say. And whether it's a player option, whether it's a trade kicker, whether it's the things we've tossed around, hard to imagine it being a no trade clause. I think he'd have to wait too long on that, and it's too unlikely of a request that I don't believe holding out would be wise in that regard. I keep going back to the 295. He can sign that now, be done with it, move on, and then both sides can figure out what they want to do at a later date. If there's any pause about whether it's Brown wanting to stay in Boston, Celtics want to build around him. Of course, you have Porzingis back at $30 million a year now. Over the next 2 years, that's official. Maybe that gives you a little bit more flexibility to look at some things next year. But in the meantime, there aren't deals out there right now that would make sense in terms of sending Brown out. And I don't think that the Celtics will consider that. This has to get done at some point. I don't know what's holding it up. Can continue to express optimism, but it's been 2 weeks into July now. Talks are off. And you can point to other examples of guys who signed later. Some of them did it in COVID off seasons, which you can toss out right away as points of comparison. Most guys sign theirs right away. Now, those players, more slam dunk supermax players than Brown, whether it's your Beal or your Jokic or whoever else it might be. This was a tough negotiation from the start. And whether you believe Brown's supermax or not, you would have thought that would at least be a point where they could both settle on to erase any uncertainty for at least the next year. And instead, midway through July, there's quite a bit of uncertainty here, whether you're optimistic about it or skeptical here. And we'll see when this resumes. For now, it's a little weird, maybe even more than a little at this point. I think it's pretty weird. And that's it for now. Celtics Magic tomorrow. Take a look back at Summer League in full after that. Here on Celtics All Access and CLNS Media. For now, I'm Bobby Manning. This has been the Garden Report.